Welcome to Marvel Vision, a podcast about Marvel, the MCU, and right now, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I'm Alex, swinging onto the pod.
I'm Justin.
Pete.
And we are going to be talking about the latest chunk of episodes that dropped on Disney+. Episode 3, Secret Identity Crisis. Episode 4, Hitting the Big Time. And Episode 5, The Unicorn Unleashed. So if you haven't watched them, go watch them. But in this chunk of episodes, after the cliffhanger where Norman Osborn found out Peter Parker's secret identity, they start working together, and a lot of stuff goes down. But broadly speaking, biggest, broadest overview here is Pete starts working with Norman. He tries out a couple of costumes for him. They ultimately settle on a costume that's relatively reminiscent to the one for the Future Foundation. Got some more tech, a little tighter fitting, I guess we could say, than the costume we saw in the first couple of episodes.
Alex.
Weird point that you wanted to bring up. Okay, keep going.
And how many minutes do you need to get your take out on the tightness of the uniform?
A lot. We also find out that on that plot front, the person who is behind the tech that's been invading New York City is none other than Dr. Otto Octavius.
Oh!
Probably no better as Dr. Octopus. So that's bumping around in the background.
Oh, yes, that's...
In addition, there's a Russian gang who drops a bunch of other villain characters, and the other half of the plot that we're getting here is very focused on Lonnie Lincoln he trades himself for his brother Andre to join the 110th Street gang. As we talked about in a previous episode, 125th Street in New York, very bad. 110th Street, lower, even worse. Like, terrible. Terrible.
Yeah,
What are you
so
talking
close
about?
To the park. People hate the park.
Dude, 110th is great. 125th is
I know,
amazing.
I'm being sarcastic. I'm joking. It's very funny to see this where they're like, 110th Street, the worst street in New York. Never go there. It's broken down. Anyway,
I was part of
the
duck pond bangers for a while, and we ran out of 96th Street.
100%.
Right by the
I mean,
Y.
they're going to keep getting lower on the show. They're going to end up at the Upper West Side, which is the fucking hellhole of New York. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
We break locks and we eat locks.
In any case, they are battling a gang called the Scorpions, which is led by none other than Matt Gargan. And as we wrap up here, Lonnie is now fully into the gang, having protected the head of the gang, Big Donovan, and he gets a nickname. What is it? It's Tombstone. So we got those two trains running. Lots of other stuff going on in these episodes, but let's do a little bit of a heat check here, since there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Now that we're halfway through the season, after 2 weeks, how are you feeling about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? Are you feeling friendly toward it, or is it a menace? That's another Spider-Man.
I thought you were going to lean
Jameson.
into is it cold or hot, because you said a heat check, but then...
No, I was trying to think about like negative Spider-Man
Is it
stuff.
ice storm that just went through, or is it like, okay.
Yeah, is it ice cool free winter, or is it turn on the heat? I don't know.
Yeah.
Does he say that? What movie does he say that in?
Bits are fun.
Are you talking about like Batman Forever or whatever? And he's like, "Eyes to see you."
Eyes to see you. Put this one on ice. Freeze my bank accounts, etc.
Yeah.
Anyway, your friendly neighborhood
Great
Spider-Man,
writing.
how are we feeling about that?
Justin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, certainly. I think it's great. I've been enjoying it.
Your voice kind of peaked a little bit on great. Did you want to take that again, or you feel good about it?
I probably will say more. That's not the end of podcast for me. It's a more nuanced take. So there's I think there's more. I think maybe we'll explore that.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Shall we? It's an interest. The show is strange to me in a way that I think is good in some ways and less good in others. Like the way that Peter Parker and his side of this story. Well, it's interesting to me that this has become really like a Lonnie Peter split, like you said, Alex, a two-train show. I would have never expected that, and I think. If I would guess, they sort of are approaching this first season as the formulation of a villain in Tombstone and a hero in Peter, and that makes them feel like they're going to be arch nemesis.
Yeah, it's really setting it up. I as far as my heat check, there are things that I enjoy about it. Some things not so much, but I'm surprised at how quick we're like moving on to ideas. We're not sitting in anything. This is moving real quick. And I didn't realize Tombstone had such a tragic backstory. This is heartbreaking.
I mean, this is original for the
this
show.
is new. Yeah.
Yes.
And that part is cool. The part that I find strange about the two tracks is Peter's life is pretty frictionless. He has fights, but he's otherwise just like a goober who's going about his business.
How dare you?
Whose biggest thing is that he is like 1 minute late for the movies in this. Like 1 minute. He's 1 minute late. I was like, wow, what an improvement on his usual timing.
I agree with you. I mean, I know you had talked last episode about not liking the jokes from Spider-Man, and I hear what you're saying, but goober is a great word for him. That kind of just that's how he is across the entire show. But I also agree with you that part of the issue that I'm having is making the Spider-Man show with Spider-Man is just like, I'm a dork, the end. And everything is all comedy with him. Obviously, there is some drama coming there. They're building it in the background. But things like the friendship with Nico deteriorating, we still don't know enough about Nico as a person. Like, we should know she's a foster family. We know she is bummed out that Peter doesn't make enough time for her anymore. But that's kind of all we know about the character. And it's in contrast to the Lonnie stuff, which is so strong and so dramatically strong. I had expressed reservations of the first 2 episodes about him turning to a life of crime as we expected him to do. But I do think the way that they're doing it feels very natural and very slow progression. It's not just him being like, oh man, I live on 125th Street, the worst neighborhood in New York. I got to turn to crime.
Stop saying that.
What is your issue? Do you own real estate there, or what is going on?
No, when I first moved to the city, I lived on 123rd and Malcolm X, and it was awesome.
Yeah, no, it is awesome.
No,
That's why I'm saying it.
He's saying that because it's ridiculous. That
I'm trying to exaggerate for humorous effect, but maybe it's not working.
No, it makes sense. And like on the Lonnie side, like I am caught up in the drama of him. Like, he's such a bright spot and a bright character in the show, and to have him sort of like fall into this but by making the quote unquote right choices. Like, he's protecting his brother, so he ends up joining the 110th Street gang. He's trapped. He wants to go to football practice, but there are other dudes there who are going to threaten people if he doesn't go with them. And then you see at the end of this 5th episode where he like enjoys the name Tombstone, and he first feels that seduction of like, I'm good
so
at this.
Worried about
I like
him.
this. Yeah, and like, so like I'm right there, and I really like the story. It's just strange to me how much like stress and challenges Lonnie's facing, and Peter's so frictionless. I'm like, why split it here? And it feels strange with like the socioeconomic thing where it's like Peter gets to just flow, while Lonnie, who lives in the bad part of town, has to struggle.
Well, and Lonnie seems to have a very steady, normal home life versus Peter, who we've already brought up, has economic challenges. His Aunt May is having to sell stuff from Uncle Ben in this episode to pay for the rent.
Even though he just got a fat check that I'm like, what are you doing with that money, bro? You know what I mean? Like, help out Aunt May. Like, that's
what he's using it for. That's why he signs up with Norman Osborn. But maybe they're going to like pull the rug out in the second half of the episodes. But right now, it really like crisped in for me when you were talking about it, with when he talks to Norman about like, I got to protect my aunt, I got to protect you. And Norman's like, yeah, sounds good. That's really laudable. But there's no threat to them. Like, there is a threat to Lonnie's family, and there's a palpable threat going on here in terms of what's going on with Dre, in terms of what we find out about the 110th Street gang and the Scorpions. But Aunt May is just like, I'm here. And Norman Osborn is like, I can take care of myself. And Nico's like, I'm bummed out, but also I'm fine. So there's nothing that Peter needs to feel responsible for. And it's nice to see a character who's just like, nope, I'm a good kid who's going to do the right thing. But there's nothing pushing back against that.
Well, I also think that the brother trade was a little crazy. Like, that younger brother, it looks kind of like, he's spoiled. He needs to learn things the hard way. I just feel like, dude, you created this mess. Get yourself out. You know what I mean?
You want to leave the younger brother in the gang?
Lonnie's got a lot going for him. That younger
how
brother,
old is that kid? 14?
Yeah.
Why is Big Donovan like, give me that child gang?
And
You
remind
gotta
me,
get 'em early.
how old were
Everybody
you-
knows that.
How
Get
old
'em
were
early.
you when you left your brother to die? Just as a reminder, Pete.
Carry the two. I mean, it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And you left him in the Soho son of a bitches, right? That
That's
fashion
right.
gang in the
Yeah.
most dangerous part of.
Oh man, they'll cut you
The
in
most
more
dangerous
ways.
part of the Apple store.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They'll cut your credit card if you don't have a big enough limit.
Two other things that I think, while we're just sort of talking negatives, though, I want to frame this up. Like, I really like this show now. I was kind of getting into the vibe of it in the first 2 episodes, and even with my reservations, really enjoyed these 3 episodes. I really like the art style. Like, I don't think we talked about this, but Leonardo Romero, who worked on Birds of Prey, is the lead character designer, I believe, for this. And particularly with the Russian gag, I was like, oh my God, that walked off of the page from his art, which I think is great. But this is definitely fat expectations. And again, they may change this in the second half. But the chipper, earnest Norman Osborn, who just wants to help, is definitely keeps throwing me. Like,
Man, yeah, you keep waiting for it to turn,
and it doesn't seem like it will. Like, I think what we're going to get here, this is pure prognostication, but I think given Otto Octavius is gunning for Osborn in particular, we're going to get to that turn when Osborn does need to step up and protect himself from Otto Octavius. Going to take the goblin formula or whatever's going to go on there, and things are going to turn like a little darker. But right now, that he's like, sounds good, whatever you need, Peter. I need a little bit more of that dark Norman there. You know, Nico keeps warning us about billionaires, but he is the most earnest, helpful billionaire in the history of human existence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, except he wears a green suit, which is suspect. When you see someone in a full green, it's like, what's up? That's
I don't know. There's this guy I keep seeing in subway ads who has a money suit, and I trust that guy. He's going to get me rich.
Yeah, he does. Anyone who's talking about how much money they have via little characters on their clothes, you know they're rich.
Yeah.
That's real rich.
The other thing that's throwing me a little bit, and we talked about this quite a bit with the first 2 episodes, is basically whenever they bring up the MCU.
The chords, that was crazy.
Don't even just
dude.
top plan. To position this show right after the Sokovia Accords, I was like, what?
That was a big like needle scratch for me. I was like, what are we doing right now?
One of the least fun parts of the Avengers, the first big run up to Endgame, was like the amount of times they said the words Sokovia Accords in those movies. And that was like sort of the unwieldiest part of the plot of the first big run of movies. And to put that here, it also emphasizes that this is an alternate universe and not the MCU, one of the MCU universes. That feels odd too, because it makes me simultaneously feel like I'm missing something, that this takes place in the past, but also in a place where the characters are completely different.
Well, I think like we talked about, this is a very what if scenario. It started in a place of like, what if he got his powers from Doctor Strange and an alien symbiote fighting instead of whatever happened to Tom Holland? And it veers him off of a different path. But the fact that they're checking in on it again multiple times, we also get a cheeky reference to, what was it, dude at the desk instead of man at the chair, which is what Ned Leeds was in the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. It just... It takes me out of it, and it doesn't feel unnecessary. And it also points to, in a weird way, that the fact that they're like, no, Civil War turned out exactly the same way, except Spider-Man wasn't there. I was like, wait, what?
It's just strange. Because, like, and it's cool. It's just, when it happens, I'm like, that is such an odd choice. There's a series of odd choices here that aren't necessarily making me not like it. It's just striking me as strange.
Like leaving the room when Amadeus Cho is about to drop a banger of a presentation. I was like, Pete, what are we doing here? You got to at least give us the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, that's not
banger
exactly...
science presentations have you attended? Just
dude,
like
did you hear that?
Banger.
That intro music, he was setting up the lights. I mean, that was going to be fun.
That was fun.
No.
That doesn't,
Tim Cook
just
at
to
Apple
clarify...
always...
That doesn't happen in the MCU, which is what we were talking about. But yes, I hear you, Pete. Yeah, I think it does. It just keeps popping up, and I'd like it to stop because the show is very much doing its own thing. And then the flip
Yeah.
side of it that I was thinking about too much, just from the continuity perspective, is if this is a parallel universe to the MCU where mostly things happen the same, the implication is back in the MCU, all of this stuff is also happening, but Tom Holland's Spider-Man wasn't there when, like, Otto Octavius was wrecking New York City. So that's weird too. I just don't want those thoughts to happen. I want them to be concentrated. They feel like intrusive
Stop,
thoughts
brain.
from
Stop, you brain.
from like a continuity nerd perspective, and I just want to concentrate and enjoy the show, and that's it, and not have to think about, okay, how does this work and how does this other thing work? You don't want
Yeah.
to see the gears, is I guess what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, it's just for me. Like, I think we're saying similar things. Like, those moments take me out of a story I'm engaged with, and it feels like they're meant to pull us further in or remind us of the nostalgia of the MCU. But just the way it's constructed, it doesn't do that. It does the opposite for me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like they
So-
made that weird choice to not stay for the beginning of Amadeus Cho's presentation. It's an odd choice. Like, why set that up and not give us a little taste? You know what I
Well,
mean?
I
Maybe we'll
think
come
they were
back to
doing
it.
it again for comedic effect, I believe was the idea, but we can talk about it off camera.
You know that
Yeah.
I think Pete had that thing happen where you get like a metal rod accidentally goes into your brain and it kills part of your brain. Except that it's
Phineas
for
Gage,
comedy.
man. Phineas Gage.
Yes,
Love that
Phineas
guy.
Gage.
Finally,
Love that
the operation was a success. I've been trying for years.
guy. to kill parts of your brain.
Yep.
The operation to
Shut it
have a
down.
railroad spike explode and go through your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's an
That's
operation.
Pete has weird health insurance. It's very like old,
Very weird.
very Victorian.
Yeah, most of it involves going down to the old railways. A lot of hobo
Yeah, a lot of
medicine.
phrenology.
Isn't that where your guys' doctors live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just go down, knock on a rusty wooden door.
Right.
Most of the medicine my doctor gives me is out of a bindle, which I assume is part of my plan, but he never says.
Yeah.
Or
My doctor keeps prescribing
repurposed
me.
jar.
He keeps prescribing me cocaine. Do you think that's?
Oh,
And it's hard to fulfill a cocaine prescription.
But it feels great.
Feels
I think if there's one big takeaway for the podcast, it's cocaine feels great. But why don't we go into the individual episodes and talk about them? Episode
Yes,
3,
please.
no
Secret Identity.
downsides.
Secret Identity
fun.
Crisis. This is the one where we get Peter going up against two characters who I was about to say Marvel Comics fans probably know, but they probably don't know, as Speed Demon and one of the tarantulas. This is Maria
Yes.
Vasquez and the guy who I didn't write down the name of. But they got tech-based powers here and are going on a bank robbery spree. Meanwhile, Lonnie signs up for the 110th Street Gang in this episode. Any big takeaways from this one?
I thought this fight was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, very well done. Just great action. I like the way that Speed Demon and Tarantula were like one suit split between this couple. I
Yeah.
thought was a smart, interesting way of doing it. And it was just, I think you really got to see Spider-Man sort of learning while also seeing a great fight, which is something I think is so hard to do.
and you guys talk about the Spider-Man humor. I thought it was pretty hilarious when he called the timeout and then time back in the middle of this fight sequence.
I really like that moment. I also like the moment when Norman calls him on the headset and he says, "Hello, God, it's me, Spidey." Good, fun little joke
Funny.
there.
They seem to have found out that CrossFit is a thing, which it's crazy. It's only been around for like 25 years, which is a really fresh Google search.
Yeah, it's a fresh bit.
I agree with you on the villains as well. And I really like, I know I was a little critical of the first episode for just being sort of a wash of stuff, but not to jump ahead, but I really do think they have settled down onto an episodic villain of the quote unquote weak structure, as well as the ongoing story. And that works really nicely. Yeah, it was reminiscent. Have you guys watched My Adventures with Superman?
Only
Yeah,
like a couple of
the HBO.
episodes.
Yeah, the Mac show, which is great. Everybody should check
Yeah,
it
it's
out.
really
But it's
good.
funny to me that show came up with a tech-based solution for most of its villains. and that tied into the overarching mythology of the show. They're going in a very different direction here, but it's very similar in terms of like Speed Demon is just a metahuman, super fast guy in the comics. Tarantula has like these energy blades. No. She has like biological blades that come out of her arms and toes.
Yeah.
And here they're coming up with a tech-based solution to it. So felt similar, but again, they're going in different directions there.
Well, the tech-based thing, I mean, there's a lot of that in the Spider-Man continuity with like spider slayers and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not quite what we're doing here, but it does make it easy to track it, villain of the week stuff back to one person. Doc Ock in this case.
Doc Ock.
Well, let's jump ahead and talk about episode 4, Hitting the Big Time, then, which has the Doc Ock reveal at the end.
I just would,
please.
At the beginning here,
Are you about to cry?
The Marvel flip has been super enjoyable, and I'm still enjoying the kind of theme song that they set up. It's a fun kind of combination of both the old school and new school.
I will say I do like them changing up the opening credits every episode to tie into whatever costume he's wearing, which I think is
the black kind of thing that we got that I was hoping would be maybe like the black suit or the Venom, but it was just a black glider outfit.
Well, going into this episode, it is the goofiest, I think, storyline we've gotten thus far with Spider-Man, as he gets classic costumes that are straight out of the Identity Crisis crossover that happened in, I want to say, like, I don't know. I don't even think it was the 90s. I think it was earlier than that, probably.
Was it the 80s?
Yeah, and eventually led to the Slingers miniseries. Do you guys remember this?
Yes, very vaguely. And I agree that these costumes, I was like, this is the cape on that first one.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Well, yeah, the 3 costumes. So there's 4 costumes that Spider-Man wears in the Identity Crisis crossover because he's accused of murder. And they're the Prodigy costume, which is the one with the cape.
First one.
The Hornet costume, which is the flying costume that he has with the stingers. The Dusk costume, which is the dark one. And then the 4th costume, I think, is Ricochet, if I remember correctly, which we don't get to see in this episode. But fun, like, deep continuity thing. Later on, a bunch of other characters got those costumes and those identities in the Slingers series. But I enjoyed that, even if it was very, very comedy-focused.
Yeah, I don't know how enjoyable it was, but...
You didn't like it?
I mean, I don't need to see him try on different outfits and then tell me why capes are bad. Like, I know why capes are bad, so.
But you have such an extensive cape collection, Pete.
You do.
I still know why they're bad.
Yeah, you specifically ignore Edna Mode and got as many capes as you possibly can. Right,
exactly.
Yeah. Incredible.
Double down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is a classic superhero / Spider-Man specific storyline. He's always just like, I'll give this a shot. Comedy montage. I like that I'm glad we didn't have.
But he shot his stingers into some poor lady's car. I mean, and then just kind of flew away. I was like, yo, dude, you just.
Well, that's what I sort of liked about it. Is it wasn't just there was a little bit of stakes to it. Like when something was wrong, it was dangerous. Like what you're describing. And then I like that the black costume the Dusk costume sort of worked. And was cool, but it just didn't fit his identity. I felt like there was purpose rather than just like put him in some dumb stuff for a minute.
Sure,
so that was cool.
Yeah, I like that. There were also, I think, like just little good comedy beats, like the way that he hit the pose with the Hornet costume when he showed up. That sort of just doing like the straight thing was fun. The whole Dusk sequence I thought was very funny with like the scratching on the tree trunk, and the kid crying with the balloon turning the balloon, and the. No pun intended, but like the stinger at the end with Norman being like, what if we put a smiley face on it?
Yeah.
That made me laugh. So yeah, it came around. It was hard to wrap your head around why Norman was like, let's dress you up like this.
Yeah, Norman is a goof in this episode.
Yeah.
Put a smile on. I was like, what are you a child? He runs a like one of the biggest corporations in this universe. And he's just like, how about a red cape? Was he sewing that shit? Like, what are we meant to take away here?
Well, no, he says that he has an entire division that's just working on Spider-Man costumes.
Just sewing. A sewing division, just working nonstop.
Yeah. That's called a sweatshop, I guess, usually.
Yeah.
But
Hey, yikes.
at the end of the episode, we do get this future Foundation-esque costume. Maybe it's a reference to something else, but that's certainly what I took away from it.
I thought it was too close to the Ghost Spider, the Spider-Gwen costume, which is a character that a lot of people know about from the younger Spidey cartoon.
I agree with Alex. I thought it was the Fantastic Four kind of suit.
The thing that I do like about it, though, is we're not done. We've already seen that he's designing the classic Spider-Man suit straight out of the Steve Ditko design. And that moment where Norman's like, isn't this perfect? And Peter's like, yeah, I guess so. I thought was nicely done. Like, he's trying to be accommodating there to what Norman is saying because he's putting so much energy into it. He's trying to be a nice guy, but we know he's going to end up with the Spider-Man suit eventually.
It's just funny to me in light of what we were talking about earlier, where like Spidey's biggest challenge is letting down a billionaire. I was like, okay, man, wow, you really crushed that. Sure. We don't get great power or great responsibility with this Spider-Man. Like, Lonnie's dealing with great responsibility, and Peter is dealing with like sort of medium.
Yeah, we haven't gotten anywhere near that yet.
Well, let's also talk about the Russian gang that shows up here, and I was curious to get your bead, Justin, just because you were like, whoa, they're piling on a lot of named characters. The Russian gang is the chameleon, the unicorn, as we find out the next episode, a random lady, I believe, and then not the rhino, but the father of the rhino.
If that was such a like the rhino is coming set up, like you could, like even the villain monologue at the end, like someday I will beat you, you will see. And I was just like,
there's such a misdirect too when he's like, she's like, it's sort of like a rhino. Wink, but it's also like a unicorn. I was like, okay.
Well, we got that, and then we also get in Big Donovan's gang, and Big Donovan is a character out of the comic books. He was also live action in Daredevil and Luke Cage, but his second command is Bulldozer, who is usually a part of the Wrecking Crew.
Wrecking Crew, yeah. Right.
So, still, how do you feel about this? They're still piling on more named characters.
It feels like too much, and again, because of our brains are broken, it's our fault that we listen to that. And so like, but they know that about the people who are going to be watching.
Just give us some regular characters that don't all have to turn into supervillains at some point. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. It's like when I'm at my doctor's and he's like, would you like some more cocaine? And I'm like, yes, yes, right now. But I don't need it. And that's what each of these references is like, just a little bit more, you know?
I'm going to contrast. I'm going to take the opposite tack from you guys. I'm okay with it, and the reason I'm okay with
You're okay with it?
I'm cocaine with it, is that to me is what Spider-Man comics are, is they're constantly piling on the soap opera stuff, and this character is always going to be somebody else, is always going to be this other thing. It's okay. Like, yes, Bentley Whitman may eventually turn out to be the wizard somewhere down the road, or not. Right now, he's just a jerk who's running an internship, and I think that's okay. Like, I don't know. To me, that's better than, like, instead of Bentley Whitman, we have John Goldberg or something.
No, give me John Goldberg so I can just relax. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it.
I want to enjoy all the other things happening.
Oh God, Pete died.
It's like when you're watching a movie and they introduce like a super low tier like henchman character and it's played by like Tom Cruise. You're like, well, that's fucking something.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I have to pay attention to this side.
Exactly.
And like I
got worried about this thing the whole time.
Chill. Let me rest.
Maybe it's a way to like get you guys off your phones and stop second screening the experience and just concentrate on what's in front of you for a change.
I would say this is the biggest drive to phone. The exact opposite. It's like, wait, what did he say? Isn't it? What is that name tag? It says J. Google.
They should have a window where you can Google it on the side. Yeah. But get out the AI stuff because it's wrong.
Yeah, I always move past the AI stuff. But like for me, when I'm like, oh, I know that outfit, I'm suddenly deep on Slinger's dark web. And meanwhile, the show is continuing to play.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about the 5th episode, though? We didn't really talk about the Doc Ock reveal, but that comes to play in a big way in episode 5, The Unicorn Unleashed, as we find out Doc Ock has been behind all the tech, talking about named characters. His assistant, Vincent, is Frogman? Leapfrog, sorry. Leapfrog, who showed up in live action, of course, in She-Hulk. We all know
She-Hulk, yeah.
Yes. But he is a character who puts on a frog suit to jump and commit crimes. But Doc Ock is doing something to prove that he is better than Stark, Banner, and particularly Osborn. But meanwhile, the thrust of the episode is he gives one of the Russian thugs a unicorn helmet. She goes on a crime spree, kills the guy who is not the Rhino, but the Rhino's dad. I cannot emphasize that enough. Very important to remember that. And Spider-Man reaches sort of a detente with him as they both beat her together. And meanwhile, Lonnie meets Mac Gargan, the Scorpion, who is the head of the Scorpion gang. By the way, his second in command, Carmilla, is also Scorpion.
Yes.
Additional Scorpion from the comics. And Lonnie, as we mentioned, protects Big Donovan, gets a knife in his arm in the process, and gets the...
Which doesn't bother him at all. They don't even go to the doctor.
Chill.
Yeah.
No. He goes to a hobo who gives him a bit of cocaine, and he is good.
Yeah, he's fine. He's got a little bandage.
So let's talk about the Doc Ock of it all. That's the big villain reveal. I think that's the overarching thing for Spider-Man over the course of the season. Pete, you are bursting at the seams to say something, I assume, about the opening credits of the episode.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to quickly say we got Wolverine in the Marvel flip for the first time, which was exciting.
Great.
Wow, I can't believe Alex called that as a joke.
I also am
and then
actually disappointed in myself.
Exactly. I'm disappointed in both of you.
Sorry?
What do we feel about the Doc Ock reveal? How do we feel about Doc Ock, the way that he's depicted, and potentially as the overarching villain for season 1? And what is he up to?
What's nice is it's the Doc Ock we know. It's less stressful because it's like, okay, great. This is just straight up Doc Ock, the villain. He's a bad guy. We don't have to hope or tease, is he going to turn or whatever? Like, great. He's the villain. He's the mastermind behind these symboled electronics that we're seeing. So I was very happy about the reveal. And the voice is fun. And they really kind of, to me, are capturing the old school Doc Ock from the comics.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I feel like maybe he's not the villain. He feels like much more the facilitator of other stories. And maybe he's the one who's going to push Norman into becoming the big villain for, I guess, maybe the climax of the season. But it did make me think, so much of this show is about tech. Like, do you think we're going to get Goblin formula? Something that maybe they don't want to do? And maybe it's just, especially with Nico talking about how billionaires are inherently bad, that Norman is just going to put on a goblin suit and be a villain.
But how are we going to get Tombstone into Tombstone, though, as well?
Like given the pale skin and sharp teeth and everything?
Yeah, like how does he...
Falls into some chemicals, I guess. I don't know. That's the opposite
Chemicals,
of what Justin
he could
saying.
be just, be injured somehow and they won't go full tooth.
Maybe he gets very scared and he, like, he sees a ghost and all the colors like, oh no.
Gargan.
That could happen. I mean, on that, I don't know. I think we could see Goblin formula. My big question with Doc Ock is, like, what is he building? Because it can't just be octopus arms, because it feels like he could already make octopus arms and move on. If his big thing is like, my plan with this whole closet full of money is now I have octopus arms, that's a little ridiculous.
Well, I don't know. It's worked every other time they've done it.
I could see if he's doing like more of a octopus army type thing, taking over the city, something like that. It's got to be something bigger. I think we're going to get it in the season finale, probably. But and on the Norman bent, yeah, I think we're going to see him in a Goblin glider or suiting up in some way. He's Gold Goblin in the comics sometimes, so maybe we'll see more of like a heroic Goblin thing with a tech-based thing. I'm not sure.
I feel like he has to go evil here.
Well, it would be interesting if he just went the technology way that Alex is talking about, and they were kind of like fighting together, and then something happens that kind of really drives them apart. But it would be cool to see them, the Goblin and Spider-Man, on the same side for once.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think maybe we'll get that for a minute, and maybe he's trying to save Spidey is why he jumps on a glider. But I think something about his ambition and the way he works is going to push him over an edge to become a villain, I think. And that's why I would prefer them not to do Goblin formula, which is something in the comics and movies I'm always like, this is dumb. This is like, Alice in Wonderland. Like, this makes me do this. And
they could tie it in, though, like the same way that Spider-Man gets his power from spider blood, maybe the Green Goblin gets his power from goblin blood.
By the way, that spider's still out there, everybody. That bit him.
I do think we're going to get something about that because spiders definitely live for a very long time. One aspect we haven't talked about yet that could, while we're prognosticating about Norman, that could drive him insane in some way is if something happens to Harry Osborn, who we spend a lot of time with in this episode.
I actually feel like they're going to keep Harry as the man in the chair.
Dude in the
Peter
chair.
Going
Dude at the
forward.
desk.
Dude at the desk, yeah. I was using the classic term.
Oh, okay.
Because and that reminds me of what's going on in the Ultimate universe now where Harry and Peter are sort of buddies. And that's cool. That's how it was in the comics for a long time before it turned. And I think we'll sit with that for at least the rest of this season is my prediction.
The only reason I might go in a different, I hear what you're saying and you might be totally right, but right now, in terms of a relationship with Peter, Harry and Lonnie kind of sit in the same place in terms of we're really good friends who respect each other. Yay. And we're having a nice time. Like Nico is on her path of getting annoyed at Peter. We're certainly going to find out more about her parents, what happened to them, if they are
fun taste in movies. She's
origin.
Got great taste in movies. That's cool.
Well, but let's to get into that, Nico in this episode, I feel like, is being positioned as the romantic partner of Peter Parker.
Yeah, she talked to her necklace.
She weirdly talks to her necklace, and she's disappointed in him in a way that felt romantic. And I was like, that's a strange way of doing it.
But also weird to bring a dude to a movie date. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you don't remember, Harry Osborn's on social media.
Yeah.
He's very
but that
cool.
doesn't mean he needs to go. They were at a place together and Spidey swung away and then Harry shows up. That was so weird. Why are you here, bro?
When
I'm
Nico
on a
was so
date.
disappointed,
I swung away from you.
I feel like Peter at least thinks it's not a date. I think we as viewers were with an understanding of who Nico is. We're like, that's not a date.
Well, just fans of Nico. We don't know yet.
The show is telling us that it was a date, and it is weird. But I feel like Peter's all you talked about was how cool Harry Osborn is at the beginning of this episode. Yeah, of course I'm going to bring him. You like him. And she was so upset. I was like, this is confusing in multiple ways, I thought.
No, it's only one way, and you're either Team Nico or you're not, bro.
But I loved...
where are you at?
That's a weird...
Where are you at, bro?
I'm fine with Nico. Nico is almost nothing going on as a character so far. She talks to her necklace, and she has foster parents.
And a really impressive taste in movies. And we know she's good at school.
Really impressive. She liked a made-up movie.
Yeah! She's a cinephile.
I appreciate her explaining social media so much because I have had a real struggle.
Yeah, as an old person,
what it is, and I guess it's followers. Seems like is important because that's what she talked about.
Did you clock though on Harry's Instagram or whatever they're going to call it in the show? There was a shot of him hanging out with a girl with both white and black hair. Do you think that is Black Cat?
I mean, yes, I do. Of course it is. This show is going to... Every person on the street is they actually appeared in Spider-Man. And it's okay. Everyone's important.
I will say, I know you're joking about it, but everybody on the street looks like a real human being in a way, and they've got to be staff members on the show. Every single time they pass by somebody where they're like,
yes,
we're spending way too much time on this dude on the phone. That's clearly the first AD on the show or something like that.
I'm Robbie Baldwin, who will later end up being Speedball and then eventually Penance in the Marvel Comics. Bye! That's what we're seeing here.
I would like to say, though, that I think this Lonnie story is so stressful, and I'm so worried about, Lonnie had this football thing in the bag. You know what I mean? He was on the team. He's a star. colleges were scouting him, and then he throws it all the way to A, save his brother, and then B, to just kind of, then he's like into, because one person calls him Tombstone, then he's like, oh yeah, this is going to be cool.
Well, Pete, again, just as a reminder, because I'm kind of forgetting the details here, but like, you tossed away your brother because you were on the track to eat a really good Philly cheesesteak, right? And he was going to interrupt that?
Yeah, exactly.
And how was that Philly cheesesteak?
Oh, it was one of the best I've ever had in my life.
And that's why we call you Cheese Stone, right?
It was a couple of steps too many to calling him Tombstone, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yes.
Also,
well,
just like, you're sense. The best. We're working real hard to get to Tombstone.
I mean, I like the moment. Like, I definitely, when he was like, yeah, I like Tombstone, I felt that moment.
I agree. I like the drama.
I don't know how you got that.
But when he was like, yeah, you tackled him, you dropped him dead, you should be dead dropper, or whatever they said.
No, grave
someone else
is what they call him.
Grave digger. Yeah, and then he's like, well, what about Tombstone? I was like, what's the leap there? Is it great tombstones that are at graves?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
He did profess earlier in the episode that he likes pepperoni, so maybe they were like, what does he want on his tombstone? Tombstone.
Wow. Yeah, we haven't learned what frozen pizza brand the 110th Street gang really enjoys.
What did you think about when there was the...
Am I the only one who's worried about Lonnie here? I mean, this is
we're all worried about Lonnie.
What
are you talking about?
I just, can he make it back on the team? I don't think he can. I think it's blown.
Bro, I got bad news.
And also,
he's the villain Tombstone. We know what's going to happen.
No, I don't want him to be Tombstone. I don't want him to be. No,
that's the thing with all this continuity shit. His name is the villain. It's happening.
What about his younger brother? Does his younger brother realize, like, whoa, this is crazy, this sacrifice, I better work hard at school? Or is he like,
he does. No. Like, in the comics, his younger brother, Dre, works really hard, goes to medical school, becomes a doctor, and that's where we got Dr. Dre from.
That's good.
All right, Dan,
do you feel like Big Donovan, on the same topic, should be like a little more allowing of him being on the football team?
He's like, you got to be here. We have to talk about gang stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about? All you're doing is waiting for the Scorpions to attack you.
Well, then also, it makes a lot more sense for Big Donovan, who has already expressed that he bet on high school football games and made a lot of money, to be like, you got to go to the NFL so I can control you and make more money on that.
More better path than slapping the book out of his hand and being like, we don't think here.
I did like the comment of like, we're doing nothing here when Lonnie's walking away. Exactly. They just sit around. And that's what the Scorpions do too. They sit around at a Mexican restaurant and eat burritos all day.
But I heard they're very good burritos.
They are.
But also, you're a gang leader who made his money betting on high school football? Who are you betting against? A dad at the high school football game? What's the market on high school football?
Yeah, I do like that guy's voice. That is a good voice for Big Donovan. That's very good.
I heard the quarterback for Mid-City has a pimple. He's going to tank.
Before we wrap up here, we've talked about a lot of stuff for these episodes. Anything else you guys want to call out? Or did we cover it all?
It's fun. I think it's fun.
It was weird the way the last episode ended on kind of a sad beat, because I feel like the other episodes have had more of an upbeat kind of ending, like more of a last panel kind of reveal like in the comics. So like I was a little surprised that we kind of ended with like, Lonnie's fucked, and like this whole thing is just looking kind of not good, and then it rolled credits. So I was a little surprised about that.
It's called a cliffhanger. I mean, that's a thing that happens in drama, so I think it's okay. I really liked how Lonnie used his football powers to evade everybody during the gang fight. That was pretty fun.
Really good stuff.
Yes.
And the biggest cliffhanger is how is Amadeus's banger presentation?
Yeah, right. Yeah. We got to go back to that.
Yeah, I do like these interns. I think they're a fun recurring characters. Asha, the Wakandan, her writing down whatever Bentley Whitman was saying.
Oh, that was hilarious.
That was a fun beat. So more of them. Good stuff. All right. Before we wrap up here, I forgot to do this last episode. What is on your vision board? Next week, we are going to get 3 new episodes of the show. It's not the season finale, but we are going to get another chunk chunk off there. So what's going to happen in the next 3 episodes? What are your predictions? What do you want to see happen, Pete?
All right. Well, we're going to get all of the Sinister Six just in random background scenes. It's going to be more villains than I can handle or be able to deal with. And I'm hoping that, we're going to get more Nico because Justin loves Nico.
I would like to know about Nico. Does she talk to all of her jewelry? Are her parents' souls trapped in that necklace?
Well, could be, man.
When is she going to move out to L.A. and join the Runaways? The actual origin of that character. Coming soon. My prediction, I feel like by the end of the next chunk, I think we have to set Lonnie and Peter on a path to clashing with each other. I don't think he's going to become the scary, quote-unquote, tombstone until the end of the season. Sort of like a transformation will happen, and it's going to be like Darth Vader at the end of the prequels, where he's like, "No, I'm this now." Is what I think. I think we are going to get a lot of villain of the week in the next 3, with Doc Ock also about to clash with Norman, and Peter trapped in the middle there.
I did want to ask you guys, what do you think about the chunk drop as a new thing?
Let's get back to that in a second, because I do have some thoughts on there that we could talk about.
One other strange thing / prediction, like we set up Pearl as Peter's crush and then have zeroed that. Nada. So that is also strange.
I think what we will probably see is Lonnie gets more and more involved with 110th Street Gang. He's going to be spending less time with Pearl, which will probably bring Pearl and Peter closer together. But I agree with what you guys were saying. The big thing that I want is just more about Nico, give her a backstory, explore that a little bit. Let's find out more about her as a person in these next couple episodes. I don't need this to happen in the next 3, but I am curious about how these two sides of the story are going to come together, because the Lonnie gang stuff with the Scorpion feels so separate from what's going on. I assume we'll see Matt Gargan get a Scorpion suit from
I feel like
Doc
that's
Ock,
the natural
and that's how it'll come together.
They're gonna, and I think Lonnie's the 110th Street Gang is gonna also try to get powered up once Gargan wipes them out, potentially with Scorpion uniform, and then maybe they get powered up, and that's where we get the clash. So it does feel like those trains are heading toward the same terminus pretty aggressively.
Yeah. So that's the stuff that I really want to see, but so far, just really enjoying the show. Pete, you wanted to talk about the chunk drop, because we had in our Discord, there was at least one person who wasn't aware. You're getting 2 episodes last week, 3 episodes this week, 3 episodes next week, and 2 episodes the week after as the finale. Pete, sounds like you have some thoughts on
Weird,
this.
right? That's weird that they're going 2, 3, 3, 2. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's kind of an interesting idea, because I've heard of dropping a whole season. I've heard of going one at a time. And maybe in the beginning, you do like 2 or 3 just to kind of get interest up. But to keep it going chunk styles is kind of interesting.
Do you like it, Pete?
I like the binge of it, but it's also, I don't know, I also like being able to sit with something, kind of walk away from it for a little bit and then kind of come back, so.
I don't like the big multi-chunk. I like a intro chunk to kick off a season, and then we
give you enough taste. You know what I mean? Give you that free bump of cocaine. Just give you going. Yeah.
Give me the chunk, and then I'll rub little bumps on my teeth for the rest of the season. Like in movies.
I agree with you, Justin. I, in general, am always in favor of a weekly release, though I do like the streaming model, particularly when. Like this very specific case, the first episode, the pilot, was just setting up a bunch of stuff. It wasn't even a complete story in and of itself.
Yeah.
So getting that second episode really gave me a better sense of what the show is. But I like Pete saying, I like discussing it week to week. In terms of why it's happening, I haven't seen any specific reporting on it, but I'll throw out a couple of possibilities that, again, I mentioned in our Patreon Discord. But the most negative way of looking at it is they don't have a lot of confidence in the show and they're trying to burn it off. Like, that's entirely possible, because this was greenlit a really long time ago, back, I think, before Disney Plus even launched, or around the same time. And they have found that animated half-hour shows on Disney Plus, even when they're Marvel or Star Wars shows, just do not draw a lot of viewers. Like, people do not watch them. They don't break into the Nielsen Top 10, which is the only independent verified party that gives you any sort of watching details. Even X-Men 97, which I think we all loved and were obsessed with, never broke into the Nielsen Top 10. None of the Star Wars stuff has broken into the Top 10. So, like, it doesn't surface.
Not even Mandalorian?
No, that's live action.
Yeah, and
for the most part. You might be confused because Grogu is a puppet, but it's live action.
What?
I'm sorry.
Wow, dude. Yeah, spoiler. Jesus.
Oh, also Santa Claus.
Wait, what?
Wait a second. Is social media real? Like from this episode?
No.
Because that sounds crazy.
No, they made it up. They made it up for the show.
The tooth fairy
that couldn't
real,
possibly
right?
be real. That would be a crazy thing.
That would be a crazy way to spend your time trying to get likes.
The cocaine fairy is real.
Yeah, cocaine fairy, 100%. They leave cocaine. You leave a tooth under the pillow, and they leave you a bunch of cocaine.
Maybe that's the
I think
fairy.
the teeth are what cocaine is, just ground up.
Yeah,
wow,
that's
interesting. Gonna be cheaper. Gonna be cheaper for me to take out my teeth and grind them up. There's a couple of other interpretations that I want to throw out there. This is just like pure speculation on my part in terms of like the way they were dropping this. So that the most uncharitable is like they don't have any confidence in the show. They're trying to burn it off as quickly as possible. One other thing they may do is they have a significant backlog of Marvel shows in particular because they went a little slow last year. So they might just be getting this out of the way before Daredevil premieres on March 4th. So they might just be giving that like, let's jab this in here because then we have Daredevil, which is going to run for a while. We know the live action shows work. And then they have Wonder Man. They have Eyes of Wakanda, Marvel Zombies. So Ironheart. So lots of stuff to get out there. So they might just be like slotting it in.
Is it? I mean, I know this is maybe this extends from the HBO model where it was just like we have Sunday nights and we have to finish one show before we start another because it's about the time slot.
Yeah.
But on Disney Plus, there's no time slot.
Right.
So why are they like, we have to finish this before we start the next thing? I would think the opposite. Keep people coming back for Spider-Man and premiere Wonder Man and be like, oh, I'm going to give that a shot. Rather than end it and pick back up.
I 100% agree with you. Like, it may just have to do with promotional resources. Again, there's no actual information about this, but like, no, there's a limited amount of PR people who can work on one thing at one time. They barely do anything, so there you go. But
whoa, what just happened?
Just threw them.
Somebody got shot, and I didn't even know. What the hell?
I agree with you though. Like, if there's Daredevil, Born Again is running, and I see the next thing on the slider in the top slot is a Spider-Man show, I'm gonna probably flip over to that next and watch that. So it's better for it. But like the last thing that I'll say on this, the most generous interpretation is because animated shows do not pop up. Part of the reason is they are half-hour long, and Nielsen measures things on minutes spent watching something. So if you drop an hour and a half of a Spider-Man show, there is a better chance it is going to surface on Nielsen than if you just drop 20 to 30 minutes.
Well, what they should have done is they should have dropped 6, then 1, then 6. You know what I mean?
Oh, that would be so cool.
Sick. Right? Wow. Definitely speak to my continuity.
Regardless of why it's happening, it is happening. So we are going to be talking again about the next 3 episodes next week. So tune back for that. In the meantime, if you'd like to support this podcast and all the podcasts we do, patreon.com/comicbookclub, where you can get this podcast and many other podcasts completely ad-free. Apple, Spotify, Android, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, follow the show. comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, stay marvelous.
And remember, you can't spell cocaine without okay.
Never mind.